Türkiye's 61 million eligible voters head to the ballot box tomorrow, with polls showing a neck-and-neck race between the incumbent and the opposition leader. Now, with a close race expected, both sides are splashing cash and making big promises to try and woo undecided voters in a battle which is being framed as one of continuity versus change. From Istanbul, SABC News correspondent Trent Murray joins us now. Very good evening to you, Trent. It would appear that President Erdogan is in a real fight for his political survival.
Yeah, that's right, he is, and I think that is why you are seeing the president right now continuing to use these final hours of the campaign to try and woo any more undecided voters. He has spent much of the day just over the Bosphorus Strait from where I am there, speaking in the suburbs, drinking tea, shaking hands, kissing babies, doing all that retail politics stuff that he's quite well known for. His opponent, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, is a fierce component in many ways. He's a seasoned politician here. He's assembled 6 different parties behind him as part of a big coalition to try and unseat Erdogan. They're all very different parties, but what they have in common is that they would like to see Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu become the new president. Whether or not that can happen or not, we will just have to wait and see. The polls show that this thing is just incredibly tight. It is expected to go right down to the wire.
We know that there's many issues in Turkey, from the economy to the recovery from that earthquake. What would you say are the key issues dominating the campaign?
Well, look, I would say that nationally it is without a doubt the economy. Turkey has been through some rough waters in recent years when it comes to the economy. They've had a sharp devaluation of their currency, the lira, record inflation as well. And as you might imagine, that is making life tough for millions, trying to put food on the table and pay their utility bills. I think in a sign that President Erdogan is aware of the fact that that is probably his Achilles heel in this campaign. He made a big announcement of a 45% wage increase for the country's public sector workers. Whether that's enough to change the vote or not, we'll have to wait and see. As you said, 61 million voters across this country. Without a doubt, the most important city for this campaign is Istanbul, where I am. 16 million voters are here. Many analysts say that it is Istanbul that will make or break this presidency.
And Trent, how do those earthquakes that hit southern Turkey earlier this year feature in this discussion in the run-up to the elections?
Well, I've just actually returned from the earthquake zone. We were down in Hatay earlier this week and Maraş, 2 of the cities that have basically been left demolished because of those quakes. And you are sensing there that it could have a big impact on how people vote. You either meet people who feel like the government had helped them a lot, they've been put into temporary housing, and they are ironclad supporters of President Erdogan, but then you meet other folks who are still on the waiting list to get a new home. Many of them are living in tents. Life is very difficult, and you sense that they are going to use this Sunday to try and cast a judgment on President Erdogan's response to the government. So look, to the earthquake, I should say. What I would say is that obviously before those quakes, the political parties here had a good idea of the different cities and how they featured on the electoral map. I think both sides acknowledge now that all of that pre-polling is now obsolete in many ways, because the quake has just completely changed the landscape. I mean, both literally but also politically.
And then take us through timelines finally. When do we know when we'll see a result?
Well, voting will begin here tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. local time. That's 7 a.m. Joburg time if people are wanting to follow at home. And then it will obviously go throughout the day. Polls close at 5 p.m. But anybody that's still in the line to vote are able to go in and do it, even if they're there after that time ends. We expect then throughout the night we will get results start to trickle through, and then at 9 p.m. local time a broadcast ban will be lifted, and broadcasters will be able to discuss polling in more detail and to try and analyse how the cards are falling in all of this. I think 2 very important groups I just have to briefly mention that could change the vote. Number one, the Turkish diaspora. There is about 1.7 million of them around the world. Their votes have all been flowing in here to Istanbul for counting. They will probably fall more in Erdogan's camp. But then you've got the young voters, 5 million of them voting for the first time. And because Erdogan has been in power for 20 years, they've known no other president other than him. So the big question is whether they will support him, given that they are familiar, or whether they are ready to make a change with his 74-year-old opponent.
All right, Trent Murray, SABC News correspondent, bringing us an update from Türkiye.